What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we tested out if JB Weld would hold instead of an actual welder for making some charge piping, and to my surprise, it actually held up. Now, while we were doing that test, we actually pushed the super cheap Turbo Civic further than we ever have before, and we were making right around 25 pounds of boost, which put us past our boost tables for our fueling and made the car go extremely lean. So today I'm going to show you guys how to add some boost columns to our Hondata S300 so that we can take this thing out, make some rips, and get our fueling under control. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Now that we've gotten through the intro, let's grab the laptop. We can open up our Hondata software. I'm going to show you guys how to add some boost tables to this thing. We're basically going to be adding extra columns so that we have the ability to add extra fueling up in the higher boost, because right now it basically maxes out at 22 pounds of boost just because of the way I have my table set up, and then from there on it goes pretty lean. So let's get the laptop opened up, open up the Hondata, and get to work. So real quick before we break out the laptop, I wanted to let you guys know that we do go into way more detail in today's video as far as the tuning side of things is concerned. Now, I'm always getting comments asking tuning related questions, so I figured today's video would be the perfect opportunity to dive a little bit deeper and show a little bit more on how we're setting up our Hondata, mainly our fuel map today. But I know that's not everybody's thing, so I did put timestamps and chapters down in the description below so that if you guys want to jump around, that's perfectly fine. But with that being said, let's break out the laptop, make some changes so we can go out and have some fun with this thing. So I've got our Hondata opened up here, and first thing we're going to do is I went under parameters, and I'm just going to disable our water meth injection, because once we make these changes, we're going to want to get our fuel map dialed back in just to make sure we're close before we introduce any additives like that. So I've got that disabled, and now we're going to go into our tables here. Now, just for a quick basics, just in case you guys aren't very familiar with Hondata itself, you've got your low side ignition, high side ignition, low side fuel, high side fuel. So 1 is low, 2 is high. Basically for us, that's just when VTEC's engaged is number 2, when it's disengaged, we're on number 1. So as far as adding boost tables goes, we're mainly just going to be focusing on our VTEC table because we're never going to be non in VTEC at 20 pounds of boost. So we've got our VTEC table selected here. Not sure how great you guys can see it, but we're not going to worry about any of the vacuum tables. I'm going to leave those alone for now. But as you can see, when we come into boost, our first table is the 10 column at 0.4 pounds of boost, and then we go up to 3.8 pounds, 7.7, basically 12, then 13.5, 15, 16.5, 18, 19.5, 21, and then 22. So before we even go adding tables here, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. Now, before you start doing any of this, if you have a good base map already running on the car, I definitely recommend doing a safety save or two. Just save the file, name it something so you know it's the safety save before we go messing around, just in case we mess anything up here. So I already went ahead and did that. We've got our safety save done. Now we're going to go ahead and start cleaning this up. So we are going to add some extra columns here, but before we even do that, I'm actually going to clean this up a little bit so that we have even more control right through here. It'll give us, even with these 20 columns, we'll be able to go a little bit higher than 22 pounds of boost if I just merge some of these tables. So let's go ahead and clean that up real quick. So first off, I'm just going to make it look a little better to the eye. So we're going to go right click, edit load index, which is the numbers we see right up here along the top. So it's at 0.4. I'm just going to go to 0.5 because my OCD likes that better. And then for column 11, we're going to go to 4 PSI instead of 3.8. Not exactly sure why I did it this way in the first place, but we did. So 12 is at 7.7. We're going to change that as well. We're going to go to 8 even. And then the same thing with column 13, it's at 11.9. We're going to just change that to an even 12 before we even get started here. All right, so now that we've got that cleaned up, nice, pretty round numbers here, we can go ahead and merge some of this. So as you guys can see, at the lower boost levels, we don't need the precision control. We have a little bit more leeway when we're on 4 pounds of boost versus up at 25 pounds of boost. So we're able to go from 0.5 all the way to 4 PSI, and then from 4 all the way to 8. So there's a 4 PSI spread there. Now, once you get up into the 20 plus pounds of boost, you want to try to keep that down as much as you can, but we know that we're not going to be in these areas very much, and when we do, it's going to be shooting through them to get to a higher boost number. So we're going to go ahead and leave that spread pretty large, and we're actually going to increase the spread up here a little bit. So like I said, we've got a 4 PSI gap from 4 PSI to 8, and then another 4 PSI gap from 8 to 12. Now, after 12, we started bringing them closer together. We're gonna go ahead and make some changes here. So we've got 12 PSI, and then column 14 is 13.5 PSI. So we're actually gonna go ahead and change that. I'm gonna do 14 PSI here. So we'll do edit load index, and we're gonna go 14. And then since we're adding 0.5 PSI to it, I am just gonna add a tiny bit of fuel. So I'm just gonna highlight all this. We're gonna go ahead and add 2% to that. That might even be a little bit much, but as I've said before, I always like to go rich and then pull fuel out. Now, before we get any further, I do just wanna say I am by no means a tuner. I tell you guys this all the time. I've learned this stuff as I go from other people that have helped me out in the past, and just from picking things up as we mess around with it. So don't take anything I say as the gospel. Like I said, I'm just learning this stuff as well, but trying to show you guys some tips and tricks that I found along the way. So this one here, column 15, is at 15 PSI. We're actually gonna be changing that. We wanna put 16 PSI there. So I wanna do 2 PSI jumps for the rest of the way up here, and then we can always make it 1 PSI way up high if we really want to. But I think 2 PSI is gonna be a good base start for us to get a decent spread here and give us some more leeway to work with and a higher boost limit before we max out our tables. The way we're gonna do this is we know that this column here is 16.5 pounds. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna highlight this whole table. We're gonna do Control C, which will copy that table or that column, and then we're gonna go back over to 15 here, and I'm gonna paste that column. So we'll do Control V to paste it, just like so. Now we have column 16 copied and pasted into column 15. So now we can go in here and change this load index. I'm gonna change this one to 16 PSI even, give us a nice 2 PSI jump. And since we are at 16.5 and I changed that column to 16 even, I am gonna go ahead and just take out 2% as well, just like we did before. We added it, this time I'm gonna take it out. So Control J, and then we'll do -2. As you guys can see, that only gives us a 0.5 PSI spread from column 15 to 16. So we're gonna actually change our 16 column to 18, which works out good because we have 18 right here. So now we can go ahead and copy this column. Let's go into column 16, and now we can paste it. And then we can change the load index for this one. It's not gonna let us make this number higher than the next number, so that might mess with us a little bit as we go here, but now we can go ahead and change that to 18. So we're just gonna keep working in that 2 PSI increment all the way up for now. And the way that I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna take this 19.5 column, we're gonna copy this one, and we're gonna put that in our 18.5 column, or column 17, paste. I'm gonna add 2% to that. We gotta edit that column to 20.1 so that we can make the column before it 20 even. So we're just gonna continue to keep working this way until we fill out this whole table and we're ready to add some more columns. So now that we've got column 18 squared away at 22 PSI, we need to come up with what we're gonna do at 24 and 26 PSI. Since we've never made a table or a column for those boost targets, we don't really have anything to copy and paste, so we're gonna have to create something on our own. Now, the highest boost level that I ever made a table for on this car was at 22 PSI. So we're gonna go ahead and copy that table once again, or that column, and we're gonna go to 24 now, and I'm gonna paste it. Now, what we wanna do is I'm gonna have to take a guesstimate on how much we should increase fueling. Now, a quick, easy way for me to try to get a rough idea on this is I can look at our previous columns over here, And see right here, it's 2,074 units of fuel. And then for the next column in the same spot, it's 2,274 units of fuel. I can figure out what that percentage is and roughly multiply that column by that percentage, and it should put us somewhere in the ballpark. It's not going to be perfect, but if it's a linear climb in fuel, the units, then we should be somewhat close. So I'm going to figure out what that percentage is, and then we'll go ahead and add it in. All right, guys, so like I said, we need to try to figure out what the difference is in our 2 PSI bumps here. So I'm just going to pick a spot somewhere in the middle, like this 1974 and this 2139. We're going to try to figure out what the percentage difference is there. Once we come up with that percentage, we can implement that over here by multiplying the next columns by that percent. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take our 2139, we're going to minus 1974, that gives us 165. Now we can divide that 165 by our smaller number, so 1974. That's going to give us 0.083, and now we can times that by 100, and we've got 8.358, so 8.36% is what we're going to use. So now that we have that number, we can use that 8.36% and use it for our new columns. So we're going to go in column 19 where we have 24 PSI. We're going to go ahead and multiply that, or add to that, I should say. So hit Control J. We're going to add 8.36%. Now I'm not sure if Hondata will actually do the 0.36, but it will do the 8%. So let's go ahead and try that. And then we're going to take this column here, our 19, which is our new 24 PSI column, and we're going to copy it. We're going to paste it in our 26 PSI column, and then we're going to select that column once again, and we're going to add another 8.36%. Now that should get us somewhat close. It's not going to be perfect. I did check a couple different spots here to come up with a percentage, and all of them were between 8.23 and 8.36. So very close, and I'd rather go on the slightly richer side. So we're going to go ahead and use that. I think it's going to work out perfectly fine for us. And now we can go ahead and start adding some more columns in. So now that we've got our fuel map taken care of, I went ahead and switched over to our VTEC ignition table. Now I recommend taking a picture of all of this before you start, of all your tables, so that you have a reference to look back at without having to open up our safety file save. So I've got a picture here, I've got it zoomed in, and we're just going to go ahead and fix our timing. So you can set it at whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you're running for timing. Just make sure it's proportionate to the changes we just made. Like I said, I'm no tuner, so I don't want to tell you guys a specific degree that you're going to go plug into any combo, because every combo is different. You really need a dyno to figure out what timing your particular combination wants. But I just keep it safe, and I'm going with a safe baseline. So whenever someone asks me about timing, I basically give them the same rule of thumb. At about 10 PSI, you want 20 degrees of timing, and at about 20 PSI, you want 10 degrees of timing. So that's the rule of thumb we're going to stick with here. So at 20 PSI, currently, which is our column 17, it is at 11 degrees, just because that's what it landed on from when we made our changes. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight all of that and hit Control J, and we're going to set that to 10 degrees. Everything from there out, I just keep solid at 10 degrees just to keep it safe. And once we get this thing on the dyno someday, we can go ahead and fix that and see what it actually likes. So from 20 PSI on, we've got 10 degrees. Now I can go in here and just clean this up a little bit and make it proportionate to what our settings are now. So at 20 pounds of boost, it levels off at 10 degrees. And at 10 pounds of boost, it would be at roughly 20 degrees. So that looks good to me. Now we can go ahead and add those extra columns, and I'll show you guys how we're going to do that. So now that we've gone through and cleaned up these tables and maximized the amount of room we have, we're going to go ahead and add a couple more columns. Now, if you guys wanted to, you could even shrink this up more and make 3 or 4 PSI swings. But personally, I like to keep it with as much control as possible, so the smallest amount of jumps as possible for the given boost level that we're shooting for. So we're going to leave ours like this and continue on into PSI jumps. And if the day ever comes this thing's ready to make 40 plus PSI, we can always go through and rescale this. So the next thing that we're going to do is go up to options, and we're going to go down to show 5 bar tables. Currently we have it on show 4 bar tables, but we're going to bump it up to show 5 bar. And as you guys can see, it gave us 4 more columns. So we had 20 columns, now we've got 24, and we're going to go through and continue on in the same fashion. So as you guys can see, column 21 right now is at 47.8 PSI, then we've got 51.8, 55.8, and 59.8. So we're going to go through here and change those. So for this one, we're going to change it to 28 PSI. Then we'll do 30, 32, and 34. We're going to do a very similar thing to what we were doing before. As I showed you guys, we know roughly what our jump is. It's right around 8.36%. So we're going to go ahead, copy this column once again. We're going to go to our next column here and paste it. And then we're going to do Control J and add 8.36%. Then we'll copy this column, bring it over to the next column, we'll paste it, and then we can do Control J, add 8.36%, and we're just going to continue that on and do these next 2 columns the same exact way. And now as you can see, we've got our table filled out pretty decently. Now if we have to, we can come in here and just highlight all of this and bring it down a decent percentage if we need to, because the percentage that it's going to increase is going to change the higher we get into boost and everything else. There's going to be variables. That 8.36% we came up with isn't a perfect equation. It's just to get us somewhat in the ballpark and keep our map looking somewhat clean. I think it's going to get us pretty dang close. So we should be able to go ahead and flash this. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at our ignition map. We changed our load index on one table, so it automatically changes on this table. And it looks like everything's at 10 degrees, which I'm perfectly happy with. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give our low cam tables just a quick look, make sure nothing seems wild. So I'm gonna have to go through here and just clean that up, get it looking right, just like we did on the high cam, even though we'll probably never ever be in this area when we're not in VTech. But just because we're here, let's go ahead and do it. So I'm just gonna go through, do the same exact thing, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and work our way right through. And then we will be just about ready to save this file, flash it to the car, and go give it a try. All right, now I'm gonna go through and we're just gonna check out our parameters here real quick. Like I said, I do have our water meth injection disabled for now because I wanna get the fuel map dialed in with just the fuel map. So quick spool is at 8 PSI, our boost control is gonna be at 55%. And then our boost cut, let's take a look at that real quick. So cold is 17, hot is 25. We're gonna go ahead and leave that boost cut at 25 for now. That's just about perfect. I'm gonna target probably 22 to 24, and 25 should be a good safety for us. So let's go ahead and save this. Now that we've got all the boring stuff done and out of the way and our new file made, we should be good to go all the way out to 34 pounds of boost. So let's go flash it to the car, fire it up, and go take it for a ride. All right, let's fire this thing up. It's freezing out, so I'm gonna let it get some heat in it for a minute, and then we'll flash our file, take it out, and see how this thing does. All right, guys, so we've let this thing get some heat in it. We're finally ready to go take it for a ride. Let's see how it does. I've got the boost control at 50%, so not sure where that's gonna land us. Hopefully 15 to 18 PSI, but we'll see if we're close there from all the changes we've made, and if we are, we'll bump it up. at what it did and we'll go from there. So it looks like we made about 12.5 pounds before I let out of it. We were at 6,000 RPM and I lifted because it was going pretty lean. We were all the way up to 12.5 at some point, so wanted to get out of it. We can add some more fuel in. I'm gonna add 5% all throughout the top here because I'd much rather have it be rich and have to pull out later than have it go lean again. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then down in here, I'm gonna add probably 4 or 5% as well. And then we'll let the intake air temp come up a little bit and we'll try it again. So it definitely looked closer that time, but it might need a little bit more fuel. We'll have to take a look at the log and go from there. All right, let's take a look at that last log we did. The rattles in this thing drive me insane. AFR looks like it still went a little bit lean, but about 10 pounds it started going lean again. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more fuel just because, and then we'll turn the boost controller up a little bit and try it again. Seemed a lot closer that time, guys. It is starting to get dark though, and I know you guys probably can't see much, so let's head back to the house. We'll call it a night and we will get back at it tomorrow morning, make some more runs and see how it does. Yeah, much closer all the way across here. Still a little bit leaner up top, but it was definitely a lot closer. We made right about 10 pounds there. So we'll go ahead and up the duty cycle a little bit and see what it does. All right, so let's go to boost control. We were at 50%. Let's go up to 55%. And then let's go down to quick spool. We can bump that up to 10. We'll save that and upload it and give it another shot in the morning. All right, guys, so as you can see, it's the next day, and the last night we set the boost controller at 55%, so I'm curious to see what it's gonna make for boost today. But before we can take it for a rip, I gotta let this thing warm up. It's just as cold as yesterday. It might even be a degree or two warmer, but it's still pretty cold. So we'll let this thing run for a while, get some heat in it, and then we will go take it for a rip. All right, guys, so we've got the boost control set at 55%. We let our intake air temp come up so that the correction factor is off, and our engine coolant temp is at 180. So we are good to go to hit our closed course, make a rip, and see what this thing does. AFR looked much closer that time. If we look at this log, it looks like we made 13 pounds, almost 13.5 pounds in second gear, and in third gear right about 12 pounds because I couldn't stay in it quite as long. So everything looked good AFR wise though. AFR looked much closer. So I'm really happy with how that's looking. So we can go ahead, add some more duty cycle to this thing, make another rip and see what it does. We're gonna change it from 55% duty cycle up to, Let's go 62% and see what that gives us. That should give us a decent little bump. Right between 55 and 60% is usually where we see a pretty good boost jump from our current setup. So let's go with that. And then for our quick spool, we can set that at least 12 PSI because we just made 12 PSI. Our AFR was extremely close. So really happy with what we're seeing right there. Let's go ahead and up it and see if it stays close. This thing was absolutely ripping, but it was a little bit fat. Like I said before, I'd much rather have fat than lean, so I'm happy with that. But we can go ahead and make the changes that we need to get it back within range, and then we'll try it again. But it pulled extremely hard right there. It felt really good. I'm curious to see what it made for a boost, and we will check our tables and make changes to our AFR and get this thing even closer. All right, let's take a look at this thing and see what we've got. I'm gonna grab the other camera and try to bring you guys in here a little bit closer since we're finally starting to make some real boost, and we'll see what this thing looks like. All right, guys, so I'm not sure what it looks like on this camera here, but I went ahead and we zoomed in on the pulls we just made. And if we start out here at the beginning, we obviously floored it. Started building boost pretty quick for what this thing is. By 6,500 we were at 17.5 PSI, and we maxed out in second gear at 21.7 PSI. So making some pretty good boost there. We're gonna go ahead and have to take some fuel out. It looks like it started going rich right at about 13.5 PSI. 13, 14 PSI it started going rich on us. So we'll go ahead and clean that up a little bit, but I did jump back on it for a little bit of a third gear pull, which you guys can see right here. And in third gear, we actually made 22.5 PSI. So it actually felt really good. This thing pulled smoother than it ever has. So really happy with that. It looks really good. The only thing we need to change is a little bit of AFR. We can clean that up a little bit, and then I might even give it a little bit more duty cycle, which will put us at targeting more boost than we ever have with this thing. We hit 24 PSI the other day by accident, but this is gonna be the first time we're actually targeting that, and our table will allow us to go there. All in all, it actually ran really strong. So let's go ahead, clean this up a little bit, and then we'll up the duty cycle and try it again. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and bump our duty cycle up to 65. Since 55 to 62 made like a 12-pound jump, I don't wanna make another big jump, so we're just gonna add 3%, see if that gets us pretty close. And then we'll go down to our quick spool, and I'm gonna bump that up to 15 for now. So now that we've got that taken care of, we took a bunch of fuel out. Let's go ahead, save this file, upload it, and go try it again. All right, guys, we're gonna head to our close course once again and see what this thing does. I'm pretty excited to see what it makes on 65% duty cycle. That is the highest percentage I've ever commanded on this thing. So very curious to see what it does. Last pull, it pulled extremely smooth. So really happy with how this thing's turning out. Let's make another rip and see what it does. We definitely hit our boost cut on that one, guys. I think we hit it twice, but AFR looks pretty decent, surprisingly. So let's go ahead and take a look at that log, see what it says, and we will go from there. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this log. Definitely the most boost we've made today, that's for sure. Oil pressure still looks good, coolant temp looks good, so I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and check the log. All right, it was definitely closer. I like to see that. She was on a rip that time, guys, for sure. So we actually hit 20 PSI by 5,000 RPM, which is pretty good for a little single cam. So let's see how much boost it actually made. Yep, we hit 25 on the dot, and it hit our boost cut, which is set at 25, and dumped it right out of it. So other than that, though, everything looked really good. Our AFR was way closer. We were almost 11.5 on the dot for a majority of that. So really happy with that. It does look like it was a little on the fat side in some spots, but a good majority of it looks pretty good. It does actually look like maybe it was going a little bit on the fat side, so maybe we'll go ahead and take a tiny bit more fuel out of it up in the higher boost levels, and then I'm gonna decide if I want to take duty cycle out or raise our boost cut up, and then we will go from there. So I went into boost control and I dropped it by 1%, so we're gonna go 64% duty cycle, and then boost cut I raised 1 PSI to 26 PSI. So I'm hoping that that gets it to where it's just below our boost cut. So now that we've got that done, I did check our rev limiters. Those look good, so I'm happy with that. I'm just gonna save this file, we'll flash it, and we'll go try it again. Much better. This thing is absolutely flying. Blows the tires off in second and definitely tried to blow them off in third. So let's take a look at that log and go from there. All right, let's take a look at this log. See what kind of boost it made that time. 25.7 PSI. So it did good. It did exactly what we wanted, right at 25 PSI. Let's take a look at our AFR, see what that looks like, and I want to check our injectors out. So injector duty cycle is up in the 90s at 25 PSI. So we're kind of pushing those to their max. So let's take a look at the table. I think it went fat again way up top. Yeah, it did. It went fat on us again. I'm gonna go ahead and pull some more fuel out. I pulled 5% in our column 19, and I'm gonna pull a little bit more even higher up. All right, let's try that. I think that's gonna be pretty good. Honestly, we have this thing pretty dang dialed in. Everything looked really good, and I'd rather have it a percent or two rich, so I'm not mad about that at all. All right, guys, so I went ahead and took even more fuel out. It was definitely on the fat side, so let's go try it again. I left the boost control duty cycle at 64%, left boost cut alone. The only thing I changed was pulling out some more fuel. So let's go rip it and see if we're closer. That one freaking ripped, guys. Holy crap. So I just did a full third gear rip, and this thing looked extremely close, and it was absolutely flying. That's the first time in third gear where it's actually trying to rip the wheel and spin the tires all through third. So super happy with that pull. Let's take a look at the log and go from there. This thing is absolutely ripping, guys. Holy crap. Absolutely flying. I couldn't be happier with how this little thing is doing. For our little garage build D16Y8, hand-ported head, mix match parts, whatever we could find on the low on Facebook Marketplace, this thing is doing absolutely phenomenal. Let's go back and take a look at this log, see what it made for boost, and see how the fueling looks. All right, let's take a look at this log. This thing was absolutely flying on that last pull. So let's take a look, see how much boost it made, and see if our fueling looks good. All right, guys, so now that we're in the garage where it's a little quieter and a whole lot warmer, let's take a look at this log real quick. So we floored it right here. AFR was hovering right on target, and then we hit our VTEC crossover, started getting into some boost. Right here, we're at 14 pounds. AFR is right on the money, right at 11.5 or very close to it. And then as we carried on with the pull, we made a peak of 26 PSI. AFR looked extremely close to that 11.5 throughout the whole pull, and it looks like our injector duty cycle got all the way up to 85-86%. So we're definitely starting to lean on those a little bit more, but all in all, everything was looking good. So let's take a look at our table here. So first off, we'll take a look at the drivability. Now, if you guys have been following along since we first built this little D16Y8 right here in the garage, that's when I started tuning this car myself, and this table was an absolute mess. But as you guys can see, we've came a long way. Everything is within a couple percent now, and this table's starting to clean up really nicely. So let's go ahead and take a look at our VTEC table. Seeing a whole bunch of the same over here as well. Everything's within a couple percent. And it looks like right at 18 pounds of boost, we did have a slight rich spot, which does look like that's what I'm seeing in the data log as well. Goes a tiny bit rich right at 18 pounds, so we can clean that up later, but I'd have no hesitation beating on the car just like this. Everything is extremely close, and the car seemed super happy and super smooth. And like I said, we landed right at about 26 pounds of boost, which once again is the most boost we've ever ran on this little garage-built D16Y8. But since we did go ahead and revamp our tables, now we have the ability and the control to run all the way out to 34 pounds of boost. So as you guys seen, we got the Turbo Civic dialed in on more boost than it's ever made before. That little D16Y8 that we built right here in this garage is running better than ever. Now, I always get tuning related questions, so I figured this would be a great video to make to help you guys maximize your fueling table for whatever boost level you're trying to target. So hopefully today's video could help you out in some way, shape, or form. As always, I appreciate you for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.